Have you ever been in that meeting? You know the one. The conversation turns to finance, the numbers start flying around, and you find yourself nodding along, but maybe, just maybe.
Yeah, that feeling is incredibly common. Well, think of this as your personal translator. Look, the goal here isn't to turn you into an accountant overnight. No way. The goal is to make you a more empowered, more confident manager who actually understands the language of business and can use it to make way smarter decisions.
All right, so first things first, we've got to demystify the core language. We're going to cut right through all the noise and start with the single most important, most fundamental equation in all of accounting. Everything else is built on this.
And here it is. It looks simple, right? But this little equation is the absolute bedrock of all financial reporting. Just think of it like a perfectly balanced scale. On one side, you have everything the company controls, and on the other, you have how they paid for it all. And that scale, it must always be in balance.
So let's break that down without the jargon. Assets, that's simply the stuff you control to make money. Things like your cash, your buildings, your inventory. Liabilities, that's what you owe to other people, like loans you've taken out or bills you have to pay. And equity, that's the owner's stake. It's what's left over for them after you settle all your debts. Just remember, control, owe, and own. Simple as that.
You know, people often use these two words like they're the same thing, but they're really different. The best way to think about it is like cooking. Bookkeeping is just gathering and organizing all the raw ingredients. It's recording every single transaction. It's the what. But accounting is the chef. It takes all those ingredients, cooks them into a meaningful meal, and tells you the story. It's the all-important so what.
And that leads us to one of the biggest head-scratchers for managers everywhere. You get a report, and it says the company made a massive profit. Hooray! But then you hear there's no cash in the bank to pay the bills. How on earth is that possible? Well, the answer lies in one really key concept.
The secret is something called the accrual system. All it means is that we count a sale the moment we earn it, not necessarily when the customer's check clears. And we count an expense when we use something, not when we actually pay for it. Now, this gives a much better picture of our performance, but it's the very thing that creates that sometimes massive gap between the profit on paper and the actual cash in the bank.
Okay, so now that we've got the basic language down, let's see how it's actually used. A company tells its financial story through three main reports. And I want you to stop thinking of them as boring documents. Think of them as three distinct but connected stories.
Story number one is the most famous one, the profit and loss statement, or the P&L. This tells the story of your company's performance over a set period, like a quarter or a whole year. It takes all your revenues, subtracts all your expenses, and what's left at the very end, that's the famous bottom line. It answers one simple question: did we make money or not?
But here's the catch. Having a great, profitable quarter is fantastic, but it doesn't tell you the whole story. It's kind of like hearing a marathon runner just ran a super fast mile. That's great performance, for sure, but what about their overall health? Are they about to collapse? To see that, we need to turn to our second story.
And that's the balance sheet. This isn't a story over time, it's a snapshot of your company's health on one specific day. And look familiar? It brings us right back to that fundamental equation. On one side, it lists all the assets, what you control. On the other, it shows how you paid for them, with liabilities you owe and equity from the owners. And just like that scale, it has to balance.
So now we have the story of performance from the P&L and the story of health from the balance sheet. But that big question from earlier is still hanging in the air. Where did the actual cash go? Because let's say it one more time. Profit does not pay the bills. Cash does. For that, we need our third and final story. And this is where the cash flow statement shines. It tells the story of how cash actually moved in and out of the business. It breaks it all down into three simple buckets. You've got cash from your core operating activities, then you have cash from investing, like buying a new building or selling old equipment, and finally cash from financing activities, which is money from taking out loans or from investors. This is the statement that finally connects the dots between profit and cash.
All right, so now we have the three stories, but just reading them isn't where the magic happens. The real power for you as a manager comes from learning how to read between the lines. It's about using these stories to find insights and ask much smarter questions.
Now, I know when you hear the phrase financial ratio analysis, your eyes might just glaze over. It sounds complicated and scary, right? But forget the complex math. I want you to think of ratios as simple diagnostic tools. They're like a doctor using a thermometer, a quick, easy check that helps you answer really important business questions.
So let's start with a really practical question, one that keeps a lot of managers up at night. Bottom line, can we cover our bills that are coming due soon? Do we have enough cash coming in to handle what's going out? Well, there's a simple tool for that.
That tool is called the current ratio. You just take your current assets, stuff you expect to turn into cash within a year, and you divide it by your current liabilities, the bills you have to pay within that same year. It gives you a super quick, really powerful check on your company's ability to stay afloat day to day.
Okay, let's ask another big one. We know if we made a profit from the P&L, but how good are we at being profitable? How much of every single dollar that comes in the door actually sticks around as profit?
For that, we use the net profit margin. It answers a simple, powerful question. For every dollar we make in sales, how many cents are left as pure profit after every single expense has been paid? A 5% margin just means you're left with 5 cents of profit for every dollar you sell. It's the ultimate report card on how efficient your business is.
So let's take a breath. We've decoded the jargon, we've learned how to read the 3 big stories, and we've got a couple of simple tools to ask smarter questions. Now let's bring it all home and focus on how you can put this knowledge into action.
It really just boils down to this simple 3-step game plan. First, you decode the language so you can follow the conversation with confidence. Second, you read the 3 stories, the P&L, the balance sheet, and cash flow, to really understand what's going on. And third, you use that understanding to ask the right, insightful questions that get to the heart of the matter.
And I really want to land on this point because it's the most important one of all. The purpose of this is not to make you do the accounting yourself. It's about empowering you to be an informed manager who can participate in financial discussions and truly speak the language of business.
So let's do a super quick recap. If you remember anything, remember these 4 things. 1. The accounting equation is the foundation for everything. 2. The 3 core statements tell you stories about performance, health, and cash. 3. And this is a big one. Profit is not the same as cash. And 4. Ratios are just your simple toolkit for asking smarter questions.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time those financial reports land on your desk, you're not just going to pass them along. You're going to look at them differently because now you have the tools. So what's the first question you're going to ask? Are you going to check the profit margin, dig into the current ratio, or maybe trace the story of where the cash really went? The choice and the insight is now yours.